Now, for many, Christmas has come and gone, and it's time to take the decorations off the tree. But that's not so in Russia, where Christmas is celebrated on January 7th, according to the Julian calendar. In Moscow, President Vladimir Putin has attended a Russian Orthodox Christmas service led by Patriarch Kirill, one of the most prominent supporters of the war against Ukraine. In 2023, Ukraine switched to observing Christmas in December. Well, in Russia, the mood is somber this festive season as people grapple with the impact of war and high inflation.
The Christmas tree in St. Petersburg's Palace Square is shining bright. For many here, this is the place to enjoy the decor, marvel at the lights, and take a holiday selfie. As for decorating their own tree, many Russians are skipping the tradition this year. There are people that need a tree who don't even ask the price, they just buy one. And there are people who, even when we offer a discount, say they can't afford it. I wish everyone season's greetings, all the best, and that next year everyone can afford a tree again. For now, many leave empty-handed. For others, of course, Christmas is worth spending even if it hurts.
I guess you can spend the money if you can also still afford food and treats. We're doing it for the children to put on a celebration for them. Of course, 2,000 rubles is quite expensive. It could have been cheaper.
2,000 rubles, that's around 20 euros. A lot of money for many people in a country in crisis, where the price of bread has risen, as have prices for meat, dairy, all groceries indeed. Real wages might also have risen across Russia, but it's largely due to rising salaries in the defense and technology sectors. For workers outside these businesses, wages have not kept pace with inflation, which is running at more than 9%, despite the central bank maintaining high interest rates at 21%.
Prices have noticeably increased. Incomes are sufficient. But when you go to the shop, you used to be able to buy more for 2,000 rubles. Public utilities are getting more expensive. Taxes are getting higher. It is very noticeable. When you go to the shop, a loaf of bread that once cost 20 rubles now costs 50 rubles.
Everything got more expensive, but everything is available. People try to live by their means. Prices are rising, everything's becoming more expensive. We cannot influence it, we just live with it and adapt. Meanwhile, the country's president is optimistic about the coming year. The most important thing is quality of life and a stable economy. Stabilization of inflation so that we do not have any price jumps, so that economic growth continues. We have already agreed with colleagues about this growth. We are not planning that it will be the same as this year, around 4%. As strange as it sounds, given the macroeconomic reality, we do not need such growth yet. For many in Russia, the so-called economic reality looks quite different. They're enjoying the festive decorations where they can, in public places, in storefront windows, and somehow find their holiday spirit even if a tree is unavailable, or not even a real tree at all.
Joining us now for more on this from Riga is our bureau chief, Juri Rescheto. DW has been reporting from Latvia since Russian authorities shut down our Moscow offices. Juri, just how bad is inflation biting these days in Russia for the average consumer?
Well, Terry, we saw indeed in the report that many people in Russia can no longer afford some things. And of course, it's not just the Christmas trees that people particularly want to have at home in Christmas these days. It's about food, which has become more expensive. But that's nothing specifically Russian. We've seen the same trend here in the West as well. And nobody has to be hungry in Russia yet. That's also true. The supermarkets are still full, and most people in Russia are likely to have plenty of food on the table on Christmas these days. The truth is, we've heard it, that not only prices have increased, but also wages, on average by 7.5%. Some researchers even say by 9%. So effortless, yes. Starve, no. No hungry. Plus, the Russian economy has not yet collapsed despite the Western sanctions.
Let's talk about those sanctions a bit, because Moscow has been waging a costly war against Ukraine for years now. The EU has passed over a dozen sanctions packages against Russia. What effect is all that having on Russia's economy, Juri?
Well, I would say despite the sanctions, the Russian economy has shown a stable performance and even positive trend. In 2023, the economy grew by 3.6%. It's likely to have been similarly high in 2024. Putin said 4%. One reason for this is that Russia has found new sales channels for oil and gas, Terry. And China and India, instead of Europe, and India in particular, are of the greatest significance for Russia. This is very important strategically, as the Russian economy is heavily dependent on oil. Russia has also reorganized the import of sanctioned goods. This now takes place mostly via the Central Asian countries and Turkey. I'll give an example. Our crew has visited the Latvian-Russian border here shortly before Christmas, and the customs officials told us that a lot of sanctioned goods from the West are going across this border to Kazakhstan, for example, and from there to Russia. So an internal crisis, which was the aim of the Western sanctions, I would say this is clearly not in sight.
So just briefly looking ahead at the year ahead, what's the outlook for Russia in 2025, Juri?
Well, many experts say that the Russian economy would reach at least its limits this year. They expect significantly less growth than in 2025. Plus, the economic driver in Russia is, of course, unsurprisingly, in times of war, the arms industry. Almost 30% of the federal budget goes to the military budgets. Military spending now makes up 6% of the Russian GDP. It's the highest figure since the collapse of the Soviet Union. This means, Terry, that many other areas are seriously disadvantaged. If all money flows into weapons, there is hardly anything left for other investments, for science or social issues. And that is nothing good for the Russian economy and for the Russian lifestyle.
Juri, thanks as always. Our Riga Bureau Chief, Juri Rescheto.